Hello, people on YouTube. I felt that in the interest of authenticity, I needed to make this video right now. This is going to be a part two to how I went from hating dishes to loving it. Because I feel like looking back, even though I knew it wasn't going to be like a one and done kind of thing, I do feel like maybe the video presented it as that because I showed the height of, the knowledge and stuff. But I think real life, like in a practical sense, it's not just ups. And so I wanted to share some of the downs that I've had with it. For the last week, I've hated doing the dishes again. And yeah, it sucks. It sucks having to not even just feeling like you're stuck going back to like old toxic thought patterns and behaviors. And it's like, it's not like I stopped doing the dishes, right? Because I have to do them every day, or we don't eat off clean dishes. But I was just not happy doing them. And I wanted to reach that state of like bliss that I had experienced doing the dishes and that I had been able to reach a few times after, but for a lot of it, I realize looking back now that like, I don't know if finding bliss every time you do the dishes is sustainable. Maybe it is for some people, but I feel like I don't know. Okay, so I have all this insight and it's a lot and it's kind of swimming all around my head. So I've been hating doing the dishes again. But I just did the dishes and I didn't hate it this time. So the difference this time is that I saw the dishes and the clean ones had to be taken out and dirty ones put from the sink into the dishwasher. And I was like, oh my God, I hate this. And I was like, okay, stop. And for the first time, I asked myself without judgment because I realized that I'd kind of been shaming myself for going back to hating doing the dishes. I was like, why can't I stick to this new like emotional experience that I had? Why can't I keep recreating it? Why did it stop working all of a sudden, right? And so I had let that shame kind of like lead me to avoid and like deny because the dishes were still getting done. So I was just like waiting till I went like right before bedtime or right before dinner and just bleh the whole time I was doing it. And just ignoring, like, asking myself, why did it change? Because I was just mad at myself that it had changed, right? And so this time I asked myself, without judging myself for it changing, because I was like, in my head, like, okay, well, I'm a human, like, this has been kind of the norm for decades. So, like, what else did I really expect, right? What could I have expected? So I asked myself without judgment, I was like, what happened? And so I looked back at the last week and I started going through like, a mental checklist. I was like, well, okay, I have been going through a fibromyalgia flare up. So like I'm just miserable physically in general. So that makes doing any task kind of shitty. And then like bending over for the dishwasher hurts. So I've been avoiding it and been unhappy about it because of that. But it's like, that's like the surface level, that's my excuse to not do it. What's the real reason that I'm not finding happiness doing the dishes anymore like I want to? And so it took me a second of just kind of like sitting and thinking where the kind of thoughts where they're like not really words, you just kind of like, they're like concepts that are like intangible and unwordable yet. Well, not unwordable, they just haven't been put into words yet. Anyways. And so what I kind of came up with was that I hadn't really been allowing myself to be present this last week really at all. I've been having a lot of difficulty paying attention to stuff. I've been in pain, and so that's made me like anxious and depressed. And so I haven't been present. Every time I've been walking into the kitchen, I've been seeing the dishes and I'm like, ugh, dishes. That's like one thing on a list of like 20 things I have to do, and I don't want to do any of them. And so, I was like, okay, I haven't really been present and like truly giving myself time to get into that deep feeling of like gratitude. And so I stopped and I was like, okay, I'm not going to think about anything else. And so I imagined what those plates really mean to me, right? And so I imagined putting like delicious food on them for dinner and watching my son take a bite of something and smile because it tastes good, and being able to go to the grocery store and pick out a bunch of delicious foods because I know at home I can go heat up a burrito on a plate. I don't have to get one of the prepackaged ones and heat it up in a bag or something, you know? And so I really like sat in that, and I didn't rush myself to feel the gratitude. I didn't judge myself while I was trying to find the gratitude, and I just I let myself get there that way, because I think the judgment of not being able to reach it on whatever random arbitrary timetable my brain gave me, I was like, oh, you can't do it, you suck, like just going into these like self-defeating subconscious talks of like, oh, you're just full of shit, you know, you're fake, like this doesn't actually work, you're gonna come across as bullshit. And so, you know, I was feeling so much shame from not being able to do what I thought I could do, that it blocked me from being able to work through what I now see and think is just part of a journey of any new habit. I think regression is part of the path forward. In a healthy way, though, you usually go forward more than you regress, right? But I do think life is a little bit of a forward and backward dance, you know? We don't always keep going forward. And so I think the less we can kick ourselves when we regress, the more we can have grace and say, like, this is just going to be something that happens. I think the more we will be able to move through those regressions and gain traction instead. This has kind of come from my idea with how I, you know, parent my child, because it's crazy how it's so easy to be loving and patient and understanding with your child, but then you don't give yourself the same allowances. And it's like, why? I'm a person too. I deserve that too, right? Like, you know, it's weird. So, but yeah, so I let myself sit in the gratitude. I didn't rush myself or judge myself for how long it took me to get there. I just tried. And when I let go of that judgment, my try worked. And so maybe it was just coincidence, I don't know. But that's the only thing that was different this time. And so I got to feel that gratitude again. And so I smiled this time because I had my eyes closed when I was like imagining all this stuff, just being present in, I guess, my imagination in the moment. I don't know. But like thinking about all the things that these dishes represent in the moment, you know? But I had my eyes closed. So I opened my eyes and I looked at the dishwasher and I smiled. And it wasn't necessarily like an overwhelming sense of nirvana and bliss like I'd had before, but I felt like peace and contentment. And that, I think, is a pleasant experience. And it was definitely much more pleasant than the experience I've been having all week, where I was just like ugging at the dishes every time I saw it. Like, there didn't even have to be dishes in the sink. I could just look at the dishwasher. I'd be like, ugh, there's dishes in there. I just know it. Like, you know. So I wanted to make this video and be real with people about, you know, this. I feel like the first video was definitely true for where I was at then. But like I said, this is not like a one and done kind of thing. I think new perspectives, really truly implementing them into your map of reality, takes practice, and that there's going to be some regression and some fighting back as we change what we see as reality, you know? If reality was super flexible and fluid, everyone would be insane, right? You know, so it's a little rigid. It takes some working with, and sometimes it fights back, you know. Sometimes we have these toxic mentalities that are going to fight to stay, and we can't let ourselves be like punishing ourselves and being ashamed of them happening, because then we're fighting ourselves and then they're fighting us and then we're going to lose. We have to be not fighting ourselves so that we can fight the actual enemy, right? And, you know, so I just wanted to, put that out there. It's a little embarrassing, but I do think that, like, if there was anyone that got something helpful and was able to implement part of that, you know, mindset change that I had to go from hating doing the dishes to loving it, if you find yourself, like, regressing or maybe falling short, I don't want you to be beating yourself up, because even me, who's, like, sharing this, is regressing, and sometimes, you know, we go forward and then we go backward, but we just have to keep trying to move forward more than we move back, right? And so, I don't know how long this will last, and, you know, nothing lasts forever either. Everything is always changing, and so I think what I learned from this experience, what I can gain is valuable actually, and be grateful for having the experience of going back to hating the dishes after loving it, would be that like I really can see now the importance of pausing. When you're trying to implement a mindset change, you have to pause and just, you have to stop although the what ifs in your head that are going on and on and on. You have to just focus on like what it is that is trying to be changed, right? It takes like directed consciousness, you know? And we have to not shame ourselves for however long it takes, because I think as long as we have an intention of where we're going to go, we'll end up there, you know, truly. And so the time it takes is relatively irrelevant. um, so yeah, if we can just not shame ourselves and have faith that we'll get there, if that's where we're trying to head, it makes the journey there easier. And so it seems kind of simple and no duh to me now, but it definitely was not. And so I wanted to share that in case it wasn't a no duh thing for you either. And I hope anyone who is on a similar journey, you know, finds a way to give themselves grace and patience when, not if, they mess up and they go back to something that wasn't helping them, because there is something you can learn in that moment. And even if it's to learn how to prevent that moment, that's a useful lesson, you know? Or even to learn that you really don't want to go back to that. Because I definitely learned that too. I was like, man, this has been like life has been so much less motivating when it's not fun to do the chores, when I'm like dreading it, when I have a bad attitude about it. And it can feel so hard, I feel like, to change your attitude, because it feels like, for me at least, a lot of times like having an attitude feels like it's just like thrust upon me, you know, like that's why I had the attitude. It's here. I didn't ask for it. But you know, it's hard to get ourselves out of funks and try to remain grateful, content, and optimistic when, you know, especially when things aren't going well. And I think there's a lot of collective grief and sorrow happening in the United States right now. And I think that definitely does something to everyone. That's why it's collective, right? But yeah. So I wish you luck on whatever journey you may be on, that you're trying to go from hating to loving, and that you can be easy on yourself when you mess up, because it's just part of the journey. You'll get to where you're going. It's okay. You don't need to berate yourself or be mean. Let's all just be patient with each other and ourselves. Have a good one.